Hello all, welcome to Swadhyaya for UPSC, and this is the continuation of the internal security under the topic Naxalism part 2. So in the previous part 1, we have defined the Naxalism as the India's most serious internal security challenge, and the series of this Naxalism, we understand in the previous video what Naxalism means and how it has evolved in India, what is left-wing extremism. Likewise, the philosophical background of Naxalism, the history and evolution of Naxalism in India, the evolution under the three phases as well, we have already covered there. And here in this part, we are going to continue the same, where we are going to talk or discuss about Naxalism ideology and the objectives of Naxalism and the factors responsible for the rise and spread of Naxalism in India. So now, without wasting time, let us start our discussion for this Naxalism Part 2 series. And in this Naxalism Part 2 series, observe this so-called diagram that there are guerrilla tactics which are being used, and there on the other side, the tribes are protesting, where they were encouraged and motivated to be the part of the Naxals and all. So this is what the diagram is representing. And now, in our the first point we need to discuss is the ideology and the objectives of Naxalites. So the ideology and the objectives of Naxalites here, from the ideology, it appears that these Naxalites are fighting for the rights of the poor and want to establish a people's government. So this is what they are using. But here you need to understand this was not in a practical way, it was not at all seen, because the facts are quite contrary. The social uplifting of the downtrodden is not their real aim, rather it is political power. So the Naxalites are having what, in the sense, political power. So this is where they are concentrating highly. So the study of these Naxalites regarding the local problems, especially the rural tribal problems and the issues which they use as a fodder to foster their end game, which is clearly the seizure of power through violent means. So they choose these violent means, which is not at all in a fair way, because Maoists have vested interest in keeping poverty alive. So this point you need to keep in your mind. These Maoists' major agenda, even though they are saying that they are fighting for the rights of the poor and they want to establish a people's government there, but these people are not at all interested in keeping to eradicate this poverty. They want to keep this poverty alive because it enables them to expand their territory. They don't allow district administration to do any development work like building roads, infrastructure, improving electricity, water supply, especially in these areas. And hence, even though they are having this as an objective, they were not at all succeeded because they choose the path, the violent path, because they used to believe that so-called government can be established, which can be seen as an result which came out from the barrel of a gun. So this is what the ideology and the objectives of the Naxalites are talking about. And now we are moving to the next one, the modus operandi. It is nothing but a particular way or method of doing something. Means they are going to use their own tactics. They are going to use some unique path, unique way in order to fulfill and implement their objectives. And hence, as a part of that, here comes the frontal organizations of the left-wing extremism. So the frontal organizations of the left-wing extremism, here it is focusing like the Revolutionary Democratic Front, the Democratic Student Union. So here, regarding this Revolutionary Democratic Front, Democratic Student Unions, Likewise, there are many to generate people's sympathy. So under these frontal organizations which they are establishing, which they are forming, their major objective is to gain the attention of the people and to gain the sympathy from the people, so that they can easily propaganda on issues like human rights violations. So they are using this path. So anywhere when combing is coming into picture, when police people are killing these Naxalites as a part of encounter itself, they are raising the human rights issue, and they are using these platforms like Revolutionary Democratic Front or this Democratic Student Union, etc. And they are claiming to say that these can be seen as the human rights violation by the security forces, and hence their major tactic here is to gain the sympathy of the people. How far they are sustaining, everyone knows that. And here and there we use it to come across the news channels and all. So every time they use it to say the same. And the second tactics they use is guerrilla warfare, powerful propaganda machinery for these Naxalites, which is active in all major towns as well as in the national capital, Delhi as well. They even have their supporters in the media. So this is what the most crucial thing. Even the media people are also there to support these Naxals and the philosophy of these Naxals. And hence this can be seen as a major important issue of concern. And the third one is tactical counter-offensive campaign, and this is what TCOC from 2013 Government of India put a check here, right from under the previous Prime Minister Manmohan Singh ji, it was there. So they have to put a check to this. So what exactly this tactical counter-offensive campaign is? So basically the Maoists carry out violent activities, and those violent activities are called this tactical counter-offensive campaign, which they run from March to early monsoon in July. So from March to July they use it to use this. Why in this period exactly? In the sense, the Maoists usually resort every year to put the security forces in disarray so that they can go on a recruitment drive. So basically at this particular time period, March to July, recruitment drives will be carried out by the security forces, and hence this so-called tactical counter-offensive campaign can be seen as a fresh strategy of these Naxalites or Maoists, which is to expand outside the forests into the urban areas to win over non-peasant classes and other social groups. So they want to gain the sympathy even from the, or support even from the non-peasant classes and other social groups who are exclusively in the urban areas. And that is also one of the reasons why in recent news we come up with a new term called urban Naxalites. And we are going to cover that in the upcoming videos regarding urban Naxalites and all. So here you need to understand that this TCOC, they are using as a fresh strategy. And the Maoists have also maimed and murdered those they suspect of being informers. So they are also using the same. So under this strategy itself, if they are going to suspect anyone as informers, then they are going to kill them. Then there will be no human rights. Then there will be no involvement of other so-called organizations who are in support of Naxalites. So this is what the modus operandi, the tactics which the Naxalites usually use it to. But here there comes a big question. What are the sources of funding, and what are the linkages with this organized crime? Because we use it to we use it to call this so-called Naxalism as the so-called organized crime itself, because they are having a perfect plan and strategy to kill, and their motive is to run a parallel government. And hence let us understand what are the sources of funding and the linkages with this organized crime called Naxalism. So here comes the sources of funding and linkages with organized crime. The first one is your extortion. Extortion from the government projects as well as from the corporate companies working in their areas of influence. And most of the time it is in the form of protection money. So they use it to say that they are going to protect that so-called corporate offices or the corporate companies or the government projects, especially in the regions where the tribes are. And hence, if they are using this word protection money, obviously it comes under the extortion from the government projects itself. And this left-wing extremism is the most intense precisely in areas which are rich in mineral resources, nothing but your forest areas. It therefore provides them enough scope for extortion. It is very easy for these Naxalites to get these sources of funding through extortion. And sometimes they also resort to kidnapping and killings to to terrorize and to extort money. So all of a sudden they start to attack on the common man. They try to kidnap and they even kill those persons for the money. So all these can be seen as the sources of funding and linkages with this organized crime. And these are the three most important sources for the funding of these internal terrorist organizations, the Naxal organizations. And hence, there are some factors responsible for the rise and spread of this left-wing extremism. So in this point of view of Naxalites itself, we are now going to talk. In this video, we are highlighting that why this left-wing extremism is having its widespread in almost all the corners of our Indian forest areas. So let us discuss that. The factors responsible for the rise and spread of left-wing extremism there. So here the corporates logging can be seen, and they use it to say that they are here to develop the regions by cutting down the forests where the tribes are directly depending. Their livelihood is directly depending. So in that purview, here are the most important 8 points which we are now going to discuss in detail. So the factors responsible for the rise and spread of left-wing extremism in India especially, the first one comes the India's land reform policy. So India's land reform policy, if you do understand this, the India land reform policy started in the year 1951 itself, after our independence, after forming our first government, first Lok Sabha. Land Reforms Act, they introduced under the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. And as a part of that land reforms, one of the primary objective is tenancy reforms, abolition of the middlemen, intermediaries, development of cooperative farming and reorganization of agriculture, land ceilings and land consolidation. So here comes the land ceilings and land consolidation as the trigger in order to rise and to spread this left-wing extremism in these regions. So post-independence, the land reform policy of India could not be successfully implemented in some parts of the nation. That really led to the birth and growth of Naxal movement in India. So here you need to understand this. So land reforms, land ceilings and land consolidation are the most important trigger points, and with a major objective, and that objective of these land reforms were not at all implemented in India, and that is what a big question mark even today, which is rising by the Naxalites, that this government failure they use it to highlight. And it was also supported by many of the protesters who are out of these organizations as well. So the first important factor is your India's land reform policy. And then comes the second factor, development projects and tribal alienation. So here you need to understand the tribes are driven by grievances with the Indian government over decades, long resource mismanagement and systematic marginalization, beginning with a series of development projects in 1980s that removed tribals from their lands in the name of public good. So this is how government is using their forces to forcefully throwing these tribes from their regions who are directly depending on the forest areas. And there comes the rights issues. And these type of development projects were started in the year 1980, especially in our India. And these marginalized poor tribes lost their lands in the name of public good. So the conflict between this economic progress and the abnormal conditions of the land rights continues to fuel the Naxal activities, and hence there is no economic progress with an objective. What the government had said previously and what governments are saying as of now is not at all reaching to those tribes' development. Still the tribes are facing the same. They have lost their lands and they lost their livelihood, and hence the so-called Naxalite sympathizers, let me say Arundhati Roy, she used to say that this tribal forest land should be called as a MOUIST corridor instead of Maoist corridor. It should not be considered as Maoist corridor, it should be considered as a MOU. MOU is nothing but Memorandum of Understanding. So the tribal forest lands have been wrestling with Memorandum of Understanding of the mining companies. The mining companies are looting the people without having any Memorandum of Understanding, no treaty between them, no promises given by them, and those promises which were given by those mining companies were also not yet fulfilled. Likewise, the sociologist Walter Fernandez, he estimates that about 40% of those displaced by the government projects are of tribal region. Why they are only concentrating on this tribal region is the big question even today. And hence that really triggered for the rise of tribal uprisings, which further called as the Naxalite movements. So the activities of Naxalites are being carried out because of these type of developmental projects and tribal alienation mechanisms under a democratic structure. And the third one is your Forest Protection Act 1980, as well as the Developmental Deficit and Economic Inequality. So the Forest Protection Act of 1980, for the first time, although the legislation was an attempt to protect the country's natural resources from exploitation, the law essentially outlawed the existence of many tribe villages that had been in place of centuries. So right from centuries they are depending on those regions, but all of a sudden they were asked to vacate those regions, and they were forced to vacate those regions by using the security forces by the government. As areas were delineated as reserve forests, traditional occupations of even gathering twigs were forbidden. People who earned their livelihood through access to forest resources in a sustainable manner suddenly found themselves outside the law. So all of a sudden they were thrown out from their regions, asking them to go out from those tribal regions, let me say the forest regions, where their direct source of livelihood was very well established right from the centuries. And it was in 2008, if I am not wrong, that this amendment to Forest Rights Act was recognized as the tribal's rights over the forest land and the forest produce. But animosity towards the government, means the agnestism towards the government, had already grown substantially. So parallelly, by the time, see, in 1980 to 2008, already that big gap between the government and the tribal people was existing, already raised, it was developed like anything. And in the year 2008, the government came up with a plan saying that there are some rights to the tribes, saying that even though the government main objective under this Forest Protection Act Forest Protection Act 1980 is to protect the country's natural resources from exploitation, the lack of basic development and the support to the tribal villages is a really trigger point. And that is the reason why in between 1980 to 2008 the Naxal activities rised like anything. And coming to this development deficit and economic inequality here, tribal poverty today is the worst part. Tribal poverty is one of the most important worst part. Tribal poverty, this is very, very important trigger point to remember, because comparatively to the scheduled castes, the tribal poverty in India is very high, and on the par with those of sub-Saharan African countries. It is most worst condition. So compared to the underdeveloped countries of your Africa, especially your Sahara desert areas, the tribal poverty in India is very worse. And the districts that comprise the Red Corridor are among the poorest in the country. The statistics are saying this. And a key characteristic of this region is non-diversified economic activity, which is solely dependent on the primary sector. So the region has significant natural resources, we know it, including the mineral, forestry, forest produce, potential hydroelectric generation capacity. Everything it is having, but there is a lack in basic development to support the tribal villages or the tribal people there. For example, let us say the Chhattisgarh and Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, Jharkhand account for approximately 85% of the India's coal resources. Very, very important. 85% of India's coal resources can be seen in these states of Chhattisgarh, Andhra Pradesh, Northern Telangana, Odisha, Jharkhand. Exploitation of the natural resources for the economic progress of the country, ironically, has led to the displacement and deprivation of the tribals, further leading to the feeling of alienation. So they came to feel that, they came to realize, they fixed to a point saying that these governments are there to exploit the natural resources by throwing the tribes out. And hence the development deficit is the most important factor, as well as the economic inequality which triggered in our countries, I mean in our states of our country, is also another important factor for the rise of Naxal activities especially in the Red Corridor zone. And then comes the social conditions. Do observe here the social conditions here. So there, the area which was encompassed by the Red Corridor especially, it is having a stratified societies with caste and feudal divisions and violence associated with friction between different social groups. So here you need to understand the so-called social conditions here, right from Garibi Hatao, poverty alleviation, to poverty is a state of mind, as we said. So government tried to change the mindset of the people, but they failed. Antyodaya Yojana, serving the last man in the queue, to till date the Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, collective efforts, inclusive growth. That inclusive growth in this Red Corridor zone is really a complete failure. Complete failure, where government failed drastically. And the 19th Zhuang tribal children have died in the last 3 months due to the acute malnutrition. Because of this poverty, malnutrition can also be seen as a part of these tribes. And you know what? Because of this malnutrition, 19 children have died in the region of your Odisha, Jaipur district, the Nagada Hill tribes. And a public outcry came out which forced the state government, the Biju Patnaik government, and then the Biju Patnaik government finally came up to take a stand and make a notice regarding this malnutrition and the deaths of these 19 tribal children. Such a type of worst conditions can be seen as a part of this red zone or the Red Corridor. And even the Panchayati Raj system as a part of our three-tier democratic structure of India cannot be seen in the region of your Red Corridor zones, especially in these forest areas. There the Gram Sabha itself is the Naxalites itself, because they use it to conquer the total region. And that is how they are running the parallel government. And hence the social conditions are also very poor, which is really also a trigger for the Naxal activities to rise and to spread this Naxalism over the corners of our India. And then comes the governance deficit here. Lack of educational facilities and basic sustainable employment, lack of basic healthcare facilities, infrastructure deficit, law and order grievance redressal mechanism was totally failed, which can be seen as a part of your good governance, is also a failure. And the administration, the general administration is a lack, and those people, especially the public personnel, were poorly motivated. Mismanagement and corruption in government schemes like public distribution system, the PDS or the target PDS, is a complete failure. And no midday meal concept, no child development or women development, nothing can be seen as a part. Poor implementation of the special laws, high-handedness of the local administration. So these 8 are the most important points from the government side, which can be seen as a lack where the government's failure has triggered. But what government is claiming, because of these Naxal activities, because the Naxals are not giving an opportunity for the government to improve the better infrastructure in these regions by laying down the roads or connecting the communication gaps and all. Because of that only, these so-called schemes or policies of the government with a good objective were not reaching to them. So the government used it to say this, but on the other side, the Naxals used it to say that these are all the worst policies where it is there to exploit the tribal people. So there is a controversy between the government forces versus the Naxalites. And this is what the government deficit, which can be also seen as a factor for the rise of Naxalism. And then comes the geographical factors. So here we need to understand the terrain in these areas is sustainable for guerrilla tactics. It is also because of the terrain. Terrain is nothing but the land, the geographical land area, that the reach and spread of governmental programs has been slower in these areas. In these remote upland areas, public officials are unwilling to work hard and often unwilling to work at all, and all these postings are often termed as punishment postings. So if anyone is corrupted, if any government official or a bureaucrat was corrupted, as a punishment they use it to send them to these regions of tribal areas, and hence all these postings can be seen as punishment postings. And on the other hand, the Maoists are prepared to walk miles to hold a village meeting and listen sympathetically to the tribal grievances. So they trying to penetrate their ideology in the tribes. On one side, gaining the support of the media. On another side, they are gaining the support of the great anthropologists or the sociologists who are in support of the Naxal philosophy. By using these as the paths, they are trying to listen the problems of the tribes where government failed to sit and listen patiently the problems of the tribes. So there, the government itself is giving an opportunity for the tribes, I mean the Naxalites, to penetrate and to have a strong command over the tribal regions. And the Maoists live among them as a part of the village itself and in the same state of penury as the tribals itself, as tribals itself. They use it to live along with them. Also, some of their actions have sometimes helped the Adivasis as well. So we need to accept this fact. So this is especially the case with rates of the connection of non-timber forest produce. The non-timber forest produce in the sense such as the Tendupatta, which has gone up as much 200% in areas where the Naxalites are active, and the contractors were very much fearful of their demands and all. So the landlords, etc., who are the people, the upper strata, who are there to exploit the tribal people, are very much feared because of this Naxal activities itself, where government failed to control that. And hence you need to understand the geographical factors are also going to play a major role. And here, what do you mean by guerrilla tactics? In the sense, as a part of the people itself, these Naxalites used to behave like tribals. They try to attack from any corner where no one can predict that. From the trees itself, they use it to attack. From the house shields, house roofs, they use it to attack. From the upper trenches, they use it to attack. Lower tunnels, they use it to attack. From the trap doors, underwater entrance, whatnot, they were very much trained. Even from the house air vents, they are ready to attack all of a sudden. And hence the guerrilla tactics, spread of governmental programs has been slower, completely failed, let me say. Public officials are unwilling to work. Maoists are prepared to talk and make a sympathetic discussions by sitting patiently with the tribes, and they are trying to know the problems of the tribes, but they are not plucking anything. So this is what the geographical factors which are also playing a major role. And then comes, and here comes the inability of the tribal leaders as one of the major factor. The weak literacy rates among the tribes accompanied by a weak articulation ratio. See, the literacy rate of the tribes is 23.8%. 23.8% is the literacy rate of the tribes. Considerably very low that of Dalits, because Dalits are having 30.9%. 1% of literacy rate. So tribals do not have national leaders with such men as to represent them are not conservant enough with the languages and discourses of modern democratic politics. So on the other hand, in case of the Dalits, the presence of Ambedkar, such a type of personalities can be seen as a part, but there is no representation of these so-called tribes, and hence that is also one of the inability feature which we can come across, and the inability of these tribes to project themselves on the national stage. As there are a lack in the national leaders, then there will be obviously they cannot proclaim, they cannot say or raise their voice national level regarding the problems which they are facing. And the aspects of geography and demography also playing a major role, because the tribes of central India usually live in the tribal villages, especially in hills and valleys, where they outnumber the non-tribal among them. However, if you say in a single state of peninsular India, the southern corner of our India, especially in Andhra Pradesh, for example, the Adivasis constitute 6%. Andhra Pradesh Adivasis constitute 6%, whereas 9% in Rajasthan, 9% in Rajasthan, 12% in Maharashtra. So likewise, there are some proportionate percentage of tribes, and hence those were not at all taken as a consideration by the state governments as well. So we can see the states which were formed to protect the tribal interest, such as the Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, roughly 2/3 of the population are non-tribes itself, and hence tribes can influence elections only in the few isolated districts where they can be concentrated. So that is also one of the important point to remember. And lack of mobilization, as there is no infrastructure, no communication, the gaps are rising like anything, and because of the gaps, the inability of the tribes can be seen. And the role of intellectuals is almost zero. If you do understand, the tribes have never had a leader who could inspire or admire or even show some affection across the boundaries of the state and language. The Birsa Munda, for example, is reversed in parts of Jharkhand, but he is scarcely known or remembered in the Adivasi areas of Andhra Pradesh or Maharashtra. So the same tribal groups don't know their leaders who fought for the independence and existence and protection of their rights in the previous eras. And hence here comes the finally the inability of the tribal leaders were also not gained the support through the role of media. So the contrast between a relative Dalit visibility on one hand, that Dalit SCs were proclaimed by the media people, but the tribal invisibility on the other hand can also be illustrated with the reference of the mainstream media. So both newspapers and televisions both failed to cover the issues of these tribes. So they rarely have their concerns discussed or highlighted in talk shows. So no public talks, no recognition was given by this role of as a part of role of media. So try to understand here, these 8 are the most important factors for the rise of Naxal activities or the spread of Naxalism in our India. And hence you need to have a specific type of thing under this so-called discussion, where why Naxalites are rising, what are the important factors to support this Naxalism in India. That is what we somewhat covered in our discussion. So in our next video we are going to discuss about the continuation of this series under the same Naxalites, under the internal security threats. How come India is challenging that, what are the challenges facing by our government, and how they are coping up with those challenges, how they are countering that, and what are the mechanisms and strategies the government of India is playing and all. So this is all for this video lecture. So please do watch the previous video as well, so that you can have a clarity on this Naxalism and all. So thank you for watching this video. Stay home, stay safe. Please do like, share, comment and subscribe. Thank you very much.